London calling YouTube, London calling everyone, and in this week of the Red Moon, prophesied by Scripture, I gather, I think the world is supposed to have ended by now. Gunderson, how was your apocalypse?
It were a right good un, lad.
Hey, and Vil, how was the apocalypse for you?
The Jedi's attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed, but my resolve has never been stronger.
Excellent. Okay. Well, good to know that you're up for the show, despite having been in the by the sounds of this. Okay. Could we now move on, Gunderson? Another follow-up topic from last week. You had some things to say. Pardon me. Yes, we're doing it again, folks. The Russia situation. So, Gunderson, thoughts on Russia?
Okay, well, they did kind of touch on this in the in last week's episode that yes, Russia used to be a big empire back up until slightly less than 100 years ago, when it wasn't the Bolsheviks who overthrew them. The Bolsheviks overthrew the government that the interim government that came after the Tsar was overthrown. But basically they did used to be a big empire, and the thing is, I read an article that pointed out that really the only thing that I'll explain why this is relevant. The only thing that the Bolsheviks and the whites being the pro-Tsarist people, had in common was that they were both strongly in favor of maintaining Russian hegemony over Eastern Europe. And the thing is, this is a mentality that largely persists in Russia to this day, that they still want to try and maintain Russian control over all these places that they used to control. And this seems to be, well, basically what's happened with Crimea seems to be taking the whole thing to its logical conclusion.
Right.
And as I pointed out in a comment, he's quite a few things he said in recent times has been a very clear sign of this, when he referred to, in one statement, which was incorrectly translated into English so as not to give this impression, where he referred to Ukraine as a part of Russia, or referred to Ukraine as this part of Russia, or something like that. So that shows that he still thinks of Ukraine as, ideally at least, being part of Russia. And also referring to, well, he didn't say it outright, he said it, via one of his PR people, that Finnish independence was, well, tantamount to treason, essentially.
Yes, I saw that.
So it's this all shows that and for this reason, I reckon this isn't just saber rattling. I think he genuinely wants to take over a lot of these countries again. Whether or not he's actually going to bother trying that is yet to be seen, obviously. But I think he genuinely wants to do it for no. Well, there might be other motives as well, like resources or whatever.
What strikes me is, why now? Any of the shit he's been doing. He's been president for how long? Why? Why now?
He was, I guess because now with all this stuff that's gone on in Ukraine, now is a very, the whole accusing the new government of being Nazis thing presents a very convenient excuse to. Well, actually, I don't know why they just did it with Crimea specifically and not the other Russian parts of Ukraine in the east. Because also, but as I said, explain some other examples of how this mentality has been around for a while. When the Soviet Union was still around, they the thing is, they did a lot of things that it was still very Russian centric. like they invented this concept known as the Soviet people. You know, there's no Russians, there's no Ukrainians, there's no Armenians, whatever else. There's just Soviet people. But really, because most documents, official documents, and the official language in most of public life was Russian, it was more or less a byword for trying to get non-Russian people to speak Russian. And and they also tried to settle, replace the people, the indigenous people of various places with Russians. So, like, Crimea used to be, up until the 1940s, populated predominantly by these people known as Crimean Tatars. They speak a language that's kind of similar to Turkish. Because they're still there from... the area used to be controlled by a vassal state of the Ottoman Empire up until the late 18th century, and those people still lived there up until the 1940s, where they were all deported to Uzbekistan, I think, somewhere in Central Asia. And some of them made it back, but nowadays they're a minority in Crimea. So they did things like that to try and, basically, maintain Russian hegemony even after the collapse. And they also did that with the Caucasus region. Like, they, even as far back as the 1920s, they drew up the boundaries so that if the Soviet government lost control over the area would descend into chaos, and then afterwards, Russian soldiers would have an excuse to roll in to try and restore order, and that's exactly what happened in the South Ossetia War back in 2008. Georgian President Saakashvili decided to attack South Ossetia, and then Putin and Medvedev were like, "Oops, well, guess we gotta go in and, as much as we hate to burden ourselves with this task of defending South Ossetia, we've got no choice now."
Well, before we move on to the next topic, Vil, do you have anything to say on the subject?
Well, my side of things is all of the stuff that I'm hearing over here. It makes it sound like we have a lot of politicians that want us to basically go in, wag our dicks in everyone's face like we do throughout most of the world, and get involved in something that's really none of our business. I don't necessarily like what Putin is doing, but my concern is really more to do with, the American side of things, and that I feel that we're already involving ourselves in a bunch of wars that we'd be better off never having started, really. And I think that sooner or later we're probably going to go in too far, and then it's going to become an even bigger clusterfuck than it already is.
Okay, so Gunderson, any response to that?
I'm not really sure. I guess I can understand, and I agree about the war in Iraq, and maybe to a less degree the war in Afghanistan. But I guess I don't, and what we should do in this particular situation, I really don't know. I guess I'm not completely opposed to the idea of military intervention in all circumstances, which is what you seem to be. Like, with what happened in Libya, where it basically escalated to the point where if we didn't do anything, then history would look down upon us the same way they looked down upon us for what happened in Rwanda back in '94.
Yeah, well,
and the thing is, we were already there before it happened, and then we fucked off when everything started going to shit because one Belgian peacekeeper was killed.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, though. I mean, how much can we really play police for the rest of the world? I mean, no matter what we do, nasty things are going to happen. And the problem is, even if we go in with good intentions, at some point, we decide, okay, well, we did this right, so we need to tell these people how to do this, that, and the other thing. And that's why I firmly believe that intervention should be saved for when a side against whom you would want to intervene is very clearly posing a threat to you. And unfortunately, we're not at that point. And I think that if we do go in there, we're going to just create that threat. And the whole thing that's going on there between Russia and Ukraine, we're not really going to stop that. That's politics that go back, and frankly, they don't really give a damn what we think. So if we get into it, all that we're going to do is end up causing more wars than if we just stay the hell out of it.
I'd say that's an America that's had its fingers burnt. Obviously, in the UK, we're in Europe, and I'm not saying I know what the British do. Gunderson, do you think that the threats against Finland and Sweden are real, or is that just saber rattling?
I'm not aware of any threats against Sweden, but has he made any threats against Sweden?
I don't know if it's explicit. I did link an article on the last video, but definitely there are concerns over Sweden. But basically, I think the implication is that Russia might supposedly want Scandinavian countries as well.
Well, it's hard to say, to be honest. I mean, as I said, I think he does want to annex Finland, probably, but whether or not he's actually going to attempt that's it's hard to say, to be honest. Also, it looks like we're running out of time.
Okay, tonight you have been listening to my guests from Yorkshire, Gunderson.
Yes, see ya.
And from stateside, Vil.
See you.
Good night, YouTube. Good night, everyone.